So we hear it all the time, right? AI is changing everything. But can it tackle one of the biggest, scariest problems out there in finance? I mean, can an algorithm actually predict the next global economic meltdown before it happens?
Okay, to really get what's at stake here, let's go back to a specific day, March 9th, 2023. That's when Silicon Valley Bank, yeah, the 16th largest bank in the US, just vanished. It was this massive shock to the system, and it all happened at the speed of a smartphone, totally fueled by social media. So the big question is, with all this incredible tech we have, did any AI see it coming? Did anyone get a warning?
I mean, the sheer scale and speed of this thing were just mind blowing. People try to pull $42 billion out of that bank in one single day. This wasn't some slow motion train wreck. Nope. This was a digital wildfire.
And right there, that's the central puzzle, isn't it? We keep getting sold this idea of an all-seeing AI, something that can spot patterns that we humans just can't see. But then, bam, major financial shocks keep blindsiding us. So what's the deal? Is this AI prediction thing for real, or is it just a bunch of tech hype? Well, to figure that out, we need to look at this massive global race that's happening as we speak.
Yeah, and make no mistake, this isn't some side project for a few academics. This is a full-on global race. We're talking about the most powerful institutions on the planet, all trying to build the ultimate crystal ball.
And just look at who's in this race. You've got the US Federal Reserve. They have a chief AI officer now. The European Central Bank has a project called Cassandra. And trust me, you're going to want to remember that name. It's super important later. Over in the UK, the Bank of England says something like 75% of financial firms are already using AI. This isn't just dabbling. It's a huge system-wide bet.
So how are they doing this? Well, you can think of it as algorithmic forensics. It's like a detective who's amazing at finding clues and connecting the dots, but they don't really care about the why, the motive. You know, traditional economics is all about explaining why a crisis happens. Machine learning, it just wants to find patterns that predict what's next. It doesn't even have to understand the cause. And that, right there, is a total game changer in how we approach this.
All right, so let's start with the case for AI. What are the optimists seeing? Why are they so confident this can work?
Well, the AI Detective Toolkit is pretty amazing. First up, you've got network analysis. This is basically mapping out all the connections between banks, funds, you name it, to see how one little failure could trigger a massive domino effect. Then there's sentiment detection. The AI can scan millions of news articles, social media posts, and reports to pick up on shifts in mood, like growing fear or panic. And third, there's anomaly detection. This is huge. It's about spotting weird patterns that just don't look right, kind of like the weirdly high number of people betting against SVB right before it went down.
Okay, cool toolkit, but is there any proof this actually works? Well, yeah, there's some pretty compelling evidence. The Bank of England ran a study and found its models could have actually predicted the 2008 crisis after the fact. Over at the Fed, researchers fed an AI a bunch of old economic reports, and it got a crazy high score for spotting the trouble brewing before 2008. There are even studies from places like Chicago Booth showing AI is better than human experts at predicting things like GDP. You know, Ray Dalio, the guy who founded Bridgewater, the biggest hedge fund in the world, he put it pretty bluntly. He basically said the era of people just making gut decisions is over. The argument is simple. Human intuition is getting left in the dust by algorithmic precision. It's a really strong case. But it's only half the story. So now let's flip the coin. It's time for the case against AI. And this is where we get a pretty sobering reality check. The people who are skeptical point to 4 really fundamental problems, and these might not even be solvable. Let's walk through them. First up, the black swan problem. John Danielson from the LSE nails it here. AI is great at learning from the past, right? The problem is huge financial crises are almost always things that have never happened before. Think about it. No algorithm trained on data from before 2020 could have ever predicted a global pandemic. And no AI trained before 2023 would have known to look for a bank run started on Twitter. Next, you've got the overfitting trap. This is a classic. An AI can look like an absolute genius when you test it on the same data it learned from. It's like it memorized the answers to the test. But the second you ask it to predict something brand new in the real world, its performance just tanks.
It's actually why Germany's central bank found that sometimes a really simple model does a better job than a super complex AI. The third problem is a little more philosophical. It's called reflexivity. The basic idea is that the market isn't a passive thing we're just observing. It reacts. So if a powerful AI predicts a stock is going to crash and a ton of traders believe it and sell, well, they just caused the crash. The prediction itself changes reality. It's a feedback loop, and no amount of data can really solve that puzzle.
And finally, we have the speed paradox. The Fed's vice chair, Michael Barr, points this out. The incredible speed of AI could actually be the danger. Imagine if thousands of different AIs all spot the same tiny problem at the exact same microsecond. What happens? They all stampede for the exit at once. And in doing so, they create the very crash they were trying to avoid. The tool designed to stop the fire ends up being the gasoline.
So, where does that leave us? On one hand, AI seems brilliant. On the other, it seems fundamentally flawed. Is it a useless oracle or a genuinely valuable tool? Well, as usually goes, the answer is somewhere in the middle.
And this gets us to what I think is the most important idea in this whole thing. There's a huge difference between two words, vulnerability and timing. AI is fantastic at spotting vulnerability. It can tell you when the system is fragile, like a forest that's bone dry in a drought. But it is terrible at predicting the timing. It has no idea when or where the single spark will come from that sets the whole thing ablaze. People knew SVB had vulnerabilities, but the AI couldn't predict the specific bank run. So that tells us what AI's real job should be. It's not a magic 8-ball that predicts the future. It's more like an incredibly powerful, enhanced early warning system. Its job is to shine a giant, unmissable spotlight on the parts of the system that are getting dangerous so that we have a chance to fix them before they break.
And remember that name I told you to keep in mind? Cassandra? The name of the European Central Bank's project? Well, this is why it's so perfect. In Greek mythology, Cassandra was a prophet who was cursed. Her prophecies were always true, but the curse was that nobody would ever believe her.
And really, that's the final takeaway here. The biggest challenge isn't about the technology. The AI might get good enough to give us the warning. It might scream at us that the system is fragile. But the final question, the one that really matters, that's on us. It's not about whether the machine can see what's coming. It's about whether we, the humans, will have the wisdom and maybe the courage to actually listen.